Okay, so since I have 2 pieces of dough, we're going to pretend like I've put cinnamon and sugar on this. Now I'm going to take this, let me move you down just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of push it. I didn't even really roll that, I just pushed it. That's my starting point. And I'm going to push that down, and then I'm going to roll, and I'm kind of pinching down this edge. Now that's the second roll. From here on out, I'm going to roll it up and then pull it back on itself. Try not to distort it too much, just keep shaping. Roll it and pull it back on itself. Push those edges down. Roll and pull, push. I'm just shaping as I go. This is very important because you're going to keep air bubble holes from forming in your bread. Now there might be a few. You might be like, well, wait a minute, she said I wasn't going to have any. Yeast is very unpredictable, and you literally can have 1 or 2 little holes in your bread, and I know they're aggravating, but the more time and effort you spend on this rolling technique, the better off you're going to be. If you only have the energy or the time to do one, put that second one that you cut out, this one right here, roll it up in plastic or put it in a zipper bag and put it in the refrigerator and come back and do it tomorrow. Don't wear yourself out and don't be a slave to your bread. Okay, so I'm kind of pushing before the edge, so kind of on top of that edge. In sewing terms, that'd be kind of like a seam allowance. And I'm just going to keep doing this. I really want it to be shaped well. I don't want air bubbles. I don't want holes in my bread. So I'm going to take some time and do this. Just take the time to do this well, okay? Now, as you will notice, I've just kind of been pushing the ends of the bread, just pushing it in. We're going to get to that after we finish rolling up. So I'm kind of pushing it down, and then I'm going to roll. Now I'm coming up to the end. I'm just going to do it like this, so it's a little bit more visible. And I'm just kind of pushing the ends. This was my final roll, and as you can see, it's like I'm really pushing next to the rolled up section right here. Like that. And now I have this lip. So I'm going to take this lip and I'm going to pull it just a little bit, and I'm going to bring it over here. And then I'm going to pinch it into the loaf like this. See that edge right there? It's been pinched. I can feel air bubbles coming out of that pinch, and I'm going to flatten that down. Okay, and I'm going to pick this up and I'm going to push, and then I'm going to take the top roll and I'm going to bring it over and pinch it down like that. And again, the top roll, bring it down and pinch, and just keep working. Just keep working it. Okay, I'm going to pick it up gently and put it into my loaf pan. Now it's at this stage. If you want to have a pretty little top on the top of your loaf, you can take a pair of scissors and cut. Just don't cut too deeply. And then you can go back and make little X's over the tops. Okay, just like that. Okay, we're gonna set this one aside. And we're going to work on the second one. And again, I'm just pushing it out into the shape of a rectangle. And don't worry if you feel like, I just can't figure out what she's doing. I don't understand. She's pinching, she's rolling. It just seems kind of weird to me. You'll get it. I promise you, you will get it. But there are other things that you can do with this dough. So if you feel like that loaf of bread is just going to cause you some serious stress, you can take what I've got right here. Just take this. You've got it spread out, la la la. I would do it on a cutting board if I were going to do this. And then take a sharp knife and then just cut like this. Put it on a baking pan like you would make cookies. Cover it up, let it rise. You've got rolls. You literally have rolls, and you didn't have to do any shaping at all other than this right here. You don't have to get too fancy. The other thing you can do was something my mom taught me when I was like 11, maybe younger. And that is, you can cut these into very small pieces. Let's see if I can give you a good example. Something about, I don't really want to cut into it, but cut it about like this. So I've got one here, one here, one here. Get 3 of those little squares and put them in a muffin cup and let them rise. 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Let them rise, and you have cloverleaf rolls. Take that to a Sunday school brunch. Oh my goodness, people would be like, what? When did you learn how to do this? Okay. Oh, and I was going to remind myself I was going to try to remember to tell you, if you live in the South and you have access to pecan trees, you can do that cinnamon roll mixture that I spoke of with some chopped up pecans that will just knock your family and friends' heads off. They will just be like, what in the name of heaven has happened? This is so good. Okay. And look into bread shaping. There's all kinds of things. You can, like from here, I could do, leave this as it is. I've got this rolled up. And I could cut this into strips, braid 3, 3, 3, and 3, and then roll that up. And I would have this lovely braid all the way across the top of my loaf of bread. I'm not going to do that because I'm not having people come over. This is just for my husband and I to have toast. We love toast. Or, a sandwich. Makes great sandwich bread. It's also really good with, if you're having an afternoon tea, which by afternoon, I mean like 4 o'clock. You can have some hot tea and a piece of this toasted with some honey on it. And yeah, that's a delight. We tend to go through 2 loaves of bread relatively quickly. Probably I make 2 loaves on Sunday, and then here's Wednesday, and I'm making 2 more loaves. We did go through it relatively fast last time. I think because it's been so cold outside, and we made a lot of sandwiches. Okay, I'm going to roll that under, and then roll this one under. Make sure everything is nice and tight. Pop that down in there. Now, I'm sure you've heard of the wash method where you take butter or egg white or whatever. I'm not going to do that. I can't because my husband is vegan. I do use, for those of you who are vegan, whoa, where'd it go? Weird. Huh. Oh, I know where it is. making all kinds of noise here. If you're vegan and you haven't found this product, Earth Balance Original Vegan, it is a butter. This is like for putting on toast, etc. This is the stick version for baking. So if you have something that you need to bake that requires butter and you're vegan or you're kind of exploring the options of being vegan, here are your butter options. And before I go on, if you're vegan and you haven't found a way to get the fluffiness that an egg would supply you with, ta-da! What is this? This is Flaxseed Meal. And right on here is a recipe for vegan egg replacer. And it works like a charm. I'll just read it to you so you don't have to struggle for that. You combine 1 tablespoon of flaxseed meal and 3 tablespoons of water, and I found that warm water works really well, for each egg needed. Let it sit for 5 minutes before you add it to your recipe. And don't forget that if you are baking something that requires a liquid, to subtract the 3 tablespoons of water unless you need the water for consistency. Now this will get thick. In that 5-minute period of time, you're going to have kind of a thick mash looking product. But anyway, it's a great egg replacer. And don't waste your money on the, what is this called? Energy or something? Yeah, I've tried to use this right here, and it is literally not as good. Honestly, it is just not as good as flaxseed meal. The only issue with flaxseed meal that I could see being a problem, and it doesn't bother me in the least, is it does add color to your baked product. So something to consider. But you know, if you're trying to be vegan or you want to try some vegan recipes, just out of curiosity, the flaxseed meal, perfect. Okay, so since I cut this one across the top, I'm going to leave this one uncut and we can compare them when they come out of the oven. All right, they need to rise. So again, I'm going to cover them up, put them in my oven. I've not adjusted the temperature. It's still 170. Turned it off once it was preheated, and I have not turned it back on. It's still just really mildly warm in there. But the oven is not on. There is no heat being applied to my oven. I'm just going to put this in there to kind of warm them up and let them rest and rise. And this rise, the second rise, which is what this is, typically can take in the wintertime 45 minutes to an hour. In the summertime, it can take 30 to 40 minutes. Just kind of depends on where you live and what your humidity levels are and, you know, what your basic temperature in your house is. Okay, so I'm gonna let that do that. Put this in my dishwasher. Wipe off my countertop because there was a little bit of oil on that bread dough. Not a lot. Rinse off my scissors. And because I did not need to use my flour, I can now put my flour away. The reason that I don't use a flour canister is because I can't tell the difference between a high protein bread flour and a regular all-purpose AP flour. I don't want to get them confused. So what I have here is a 2-gallon zipper bag, non-sponsored. And what I'm going to do is put both bags of flour in this bag. I use these to store my bread in. A 1 gallon bag just isn't big enough. And I get, I don't know, it's almost like fingernails on a chalkboard to me when they won't fit. I try really, really hard not to let it bother me, but I've spent all this time making the bread, and I put it in a 1 gallon bag, and it just won't fit. So these 2 gallon zipper bags are typically not available in grocery stores. They might be available if you have, say, a cash and carry, you know, a restaurant supply like cash and carry is. Maybe at Costco. I very rarely go to Costco, but they are kind of a specialty item. I got these on Amazon, but it is a 2 gallon bag. It's rather large, as you can see. It's got enough room for a big, it's got like almost 10-pound bag of flour on top of a little tiny bit left. But I'm gonna go put these away. While we wait, I was going to show you this. This is a little pen and ink book. I believe I got this at Walmart about 2 years ago. No, actually it was 1.5 years ago. I know exactly where I was. Yep. So anyway, what I do is when I'm bored, I have some colored pencils and I just kind of sketch, or ink pens. I just go through here and I draw. During the holidays, I write notes. It is very windy today. The power went out. The dogs are upset. That was on 12/20 of 2018, and I was watching Ghosts of Highway 20 on YouTube. Apparently I drew a wreath. I was trying to experiment with color blending. Kind of weird. I was drawing a branch, and then occasionally I will throw in a recipe that I don't want to lose. So if I have one, like for example, I ought to transfer my mother's pecan pie recipe. There it is. She gave it to me years and years ago, obviously when she was still living. And I was married and I didn't have my children yet. So this was over 30 years ago. And I've treasured this because it is an award-winning pecan pie recipe. She won awards. I won awards. I shared it with a friend of mine recently, and she made it for a Christmas event, I believe, and she said it was wonderful. I know people have a tendency to change recipes. This one was actually my grandmother Lightning Bug's pecan pie recipe. She had pecan trees in her yard. And she basically got this recipe through trial and error. And then my mother handed it to me. And to be honest with you, I don't know if my mother didn't or did change any of the ingredient list. But I'll just show it to you. Should you choose to want to make a pecan pie. I'm not going to keep secrets. We should all learn how to make all kinds of good food to share, to give, to keep. So there it is. It's, and I'll read it to you in case you couldn't see that. It's 1 cup of white sugar, 1 stick of butter or margarine. I always used butter. 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 teaspoons of vinegar. I used apple cider vinegar. I'm sure you could use white. 2 eggs beaten before you put them in the other ingredients. And then 2 cups of chopped pecans. Now what I've done in the past, and this is my variation, is I have used 1 cup of chopped and 1 cup of whole. And I keep the 1 cup of whole out of the mix. So what you're going to do is you're going to mix everything together, and you're going to pour it into a pie shell. If you need a pie shell, you can use Pillsbury. They're in the dairy case, I think. With the biscuits, you know, the canned biscuits and stuff, they're so easy to use. And then you're going. Then in my case, if you've kept out that 1 cup of whole or pecan halves, not whole pecans, but you know, half of a pecan, which I think I might have some in here. Let's see. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. Half of a pecan, right? So you're going to keep out a cup of this. You've chopped up the other cup. And then you're going to take these and lay them on top after you've poured everything else into that pie shell. You're going to take these and just go all the way around. You might have to adjust because a cup isn't very many of these. So here's like the pie, and then this kind of right in the middle so that you can make a circle and then have, just for a decorative touch, you know, have a couple in the middle. So you've got like a cup of this right there. You might want to, you know, play with it a little bit before you get it all in the pie shell. Or just do it like my mom and just use the 2 cups of chopped pecans and not worry about fancifying it. Okay, and then you're going to bake it for a full hour at 300 degrees. 300. It's an odd temperature for a pie, but that is exactly what it takes. It's those eggs. It's making a custard, the eggs and the sugar. All of those things have to come together, and oh my gosh, it is so good. And yes, I am not kidding you. There is not one drop of corn syrup in this recipe. And it will knock your socks off. So yeah, that's going to go in my little book. And the reason I take this with me is because oftentimes people will say, oh my gosh, did you see that recipe using cherries and dates the other day? It was so good. And I tried it, and I'll make myself a note, you know, in something similar to this. I have quite a few of these, but this one is my new one, and I like it. I recommend it, is what I'm saying. All right, I'm going to check on our loaves. I've been talking for a long time. All right, they are about half there. When I come back, we'll be ready to take them out. And here's a little tip. My house heater is on. The house is warm. I know it's going to take about 15 minutes. That's sad, but about 15 minutes for my oven to preheat. So I'm not going to let them sit in that oven rising when I could be letting them finish the rise outside of the oven while I am preheating the oven, so I don't have a waste of time. So in about 10 minutes, I'm going to come back, take them out, preheat the oven, and then we'll bake them when they're ready to go. The never-ending video. I just keep thinking of things I could talk about. So what I'm doing right now is I'm feeding my dogs. I don't know, this is January of 2019, and if you have a pet, you're probably aware, especially a dog, that there have been a number of dog food recalls. So for the longest time, we've been feeding our pug chicken that we cook. And now I have Bam Bam that I brought back with me from Alabama. And we've kind of been working with their diets a little bit. Bam Bam isn't quite a year old. He'll be a year old on February 5th, my birthday. But we're using a crock pot, and I know a lot of people are like, I don't really want to do that. It's working great for me. This particular go-round of food is chicken thighs and green beans. And what I do is I take the chicken thigh skin off, and I cook them in the crock pot. And then because the dogs aren't going to get into this bowl. This stays in the refrigerator. I don't have to worry about the bones. I can remove them if I want to. They're just going to fall right off of the chicken thigh meat. And then for Bam Bam, in this particular mixture, he is going to get about, for breakfast, he's going to get about 3 green beans chopped up, and then about just shy of a half a cup of the meat. And remember, this is just for breakfast, and he eats at 7 o'clock or close to 7 o'clock in the morning every day. All right. And then if you read about dog nutrition, there is an element in corn oil that they apparently need. I'm trying not to be too skeptical of that. It's I don't know. I have issues with it. My gut instinct tells me no, they don't. But I don't want to withhold it, you know, just in case he does. And it's such a minuscule amount. It is about a quarter of a teaspoon. So this is a half of a teaspoon, and I just kind of give him about half of a half. He gets that twice a day, so he ends up with a full half. And then I just stir that up. I will be adding a little bit of chicken broth to that. And then the pug, Harley, he has very bad teeth. He has since he was a puppy. And he doesn't chew very well. Bam Bam tends to take his time and chew his food. And he doesn't, you know, just inhale his food like a lot of dogs. Harley, on the other hand, is a Hoover vacuum cleaner. And loves his food. He's not food aggressive. He's a hungry pup. He loves to eat. So I just have to make sure that it's chopped up relatively fine so that he doesn't choke. I'm just going to pull this off the bone. So you thought you were looking at a bread recipe. And you've had all kinds of stuff going on today. And this was cooked for 9 hours in the crock pot on low. I did heat it up before I put the chicken in there. Washed the green beans. And the next food item they're going to get will probably be beef. Maybe turkey. We haven't really decided yet. Okay, there's Harley's. So I'm going to wash my hands. Now, Harley is 8 years old. We did get him as a puppy from a dear friend of mine. So we are feeding him this Balance It carnivore blend. Again, not sponsored. We just happen to use this product. It's, I'm not going to lie, it's very complicated to figure this out. Bam Bam has a funny foot. His little bone is twisted at the ankle, or whatever that's called on a dog. And he's been seen by my vet. I'm concerned about giving him too much calcium. I don't want him to grow too fast. So he only gets this every now and then. After he turns a year old, I will probably look into some type of nutritional supplement that is a low calcium. It concerns me. I just don't want there to be an overgrowth in his bones for that reason. I don't want him to have to go through surgery. I don't want him to be in pain, obviously. So I'm going to be very careful about what I give him. But, Harley gets this. You cannot put this on the food and then warm the food in the microwave. So the way we do this is we warm the food in the microwave first before we put the Balance It in Harley's food. And I generally go about 22 seconds. I put 2 bowls in my microwave at the same time. You can, heat that up with the corn oil. Because the food has been in the refrigerator, I personally, Bam Bam doesn't care. He'll eat it cold or hot. He doesn't care. Cold chicken, yes. Cold beef, yes. Harley, on the other hand, in his I hate to say advancing years, but you know, he's getting a little old. He's a little grumpier. Bam Bam has a long nose, and therefore his bowl is a longer bowl to accommodate and make it easier for him to get into his food and pick it up with his mouth. Harley, of course, being a pug, has a very short snout and doesn't need a long bowl. He has a hard time with that. Okay, so I'm going to give Harley about that much of this. Balance it. Bam Bam, are you ready for breakfast? Oh my goodness. It's been a snoozy morning, huh? And then I'm going to stir just to kind of get that blended in. They get a little bit more elaborate dinner. There'll be some pumpkin mixed in, sometimes some applesauce. But you know, they've been asleep, and their nighttime routine is to go for a WALK, and yes, I do have to spell that. I will have insane dogs if I don't. So anyway, that's